Are you ready to let go? Let go and let God. You know, they say there are only two emotions in the world, love and fear. And that's what Yes to Love was singing about. Letting go of fear and embracing the love that we have the capacity for in our lives. Our topic today is the fear of intimacy. Now, isn't that a strange topic for a spiritual community to be talking about? Or is it? The twist that I want to put on this today may surprise you. So fear, we're ready. Fear is defined as an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain or a threat. Understand? Fear here? That unpleasant emotion caused by something, a belief in someone or something, that they may be dangerous to us, that they may cause pain to us, or be a threat. So it's that belief system here. What are we believing about our lives and about how we show up in the world and how others respond to us? Do we live our lives from a place of fear? Or do we live our lives from the place of love? From the compassion that's there? It's a good question for us to consider. And I want to remind you that you are a human being having a spiritual, no. That's why I want to remind you, so I can remind myself. That you are a spiritual being having a human experience. So as spiritual beings, what do we have to fear? The big point here for you to get today, I'll give it to you right up front, is that if you are a spiritual being, you know that, you feel that, you live from that place. You are one with God as a spiritual being. So there is nothing to fear. We know that God is all there is. There's not God in something else. There's not God in the devil. There's only God. And if there's only God, and we know God is good, then what do we have to fear? So as spiritual beings, that's one plane that we can live on, that we can operate from, and that we can take solace in. Now, we are having our human experience, aren't we? And so sometimes that might look like there's fear. When we turn on the TV, when we turn on the radio, we get bombarded with messages. And most of those messages, I would say, are things that create fear in people, right? It makes us think that there's something that's a threat to us, something that we should be afraid of, something that we should shrink from. And when we hear about natural disasters and human tragedies, our hearts are open. And we must remember that we are spiritual beings. And as a spiritual being, we raise the vibration if we choose. We raise that vibration in the world so that there is peace. There can be love when people are not feeling that on a human level. At the end of the talk today, I'm going to be sharing a prayer that was written by Ken Gordon. He is our spiritual leader for Centers for Spiritual Living, and I've adapted the prayer just a little bit. But he wrote this prayer for the people of California. And so I'll be praying that and ask you to join me in that prayer. That's one of those acts of nature, the things that happen, that when wildfires are running through the area, do we stand there and say, God is all there is. God is very good. I love this. And we get burned. So we have to be aware of when we're activating our spiritual selves and consciousness, and when we're activating our human activity. And when we can bring those into balance, so that no matter what human thing we are responding to, what natural tragedy, if it's Las Vegas, if it's a wildfire, if it's a hurricane, can we take that physical thing that's happening and bring our spiritual consciousness to it? To understand God is all there is. There is something to trust here. There's a power greater than me. I am part of it, and it is all of me. And I can turn myself to it, surrender to it, and allow it to be all that I want to be. I also want to bring into this talk the intimacy part. Intimacy, for most of us, we will think about, what does this mean? Dictionary.com says it's a close, loving, personal relationship with another person or group. That's one way to define it. Know that we, as Center for Spiritual Living Parker, we have an intimacy within this group as we gather here. The classes that we teach each have their own intimacy that's developed there. So when we talk about the word intimacy, most people think of a sexual relationship. But intimacy is so much more than just the sexual relationship. Intimacy is how we open our hearts to one another, how we combine our consciousness with other people as well. And you can be very intimate with somebody without ever even touching them, because it's heart to heart. So the fear of intimacy that I'm talking about today is our fear of opening our hearts to Spirit, to God. Wasn't what you were thinking about, was it? So many people say, yes, I understand I'm a spiritual being, but I'm not a good person. I came from this background. I had this and that in my life. I've done this or that. And so we start limiting ourselves. We start saying, I'm not good enough. And it's a lie. You're lying to yourself, because you are a creation of the divine. You are God expressing right here. We are each one made in the likeness and image of God. That means we have the God nature within us. And that God nature is creative, it's loving, it's unconditional love. That's love for ourselves and love for each other. It gives us the capacity to rise up when we have things that happen in our lives that want to push us down. It gives us the resilience to come back into life and to stand strong, knowing that we are sourced and resourced by Spirit. God is all there is, and we can tap into that when we open our hearts, when we allow ourselves to be intimate with that, when we turn off that critical thinking mind that wants to keep us down, to hold us back from where we are in life and what we're doing. To me, intimacy means that we're being real. Intimacy equals authenticity. To live our authentic life. Who we have come here to be, who we are called to be in the world. And to step into that boldly. To know that we are unique individuals expressing God, and nobody can express God like we can. It doesn't mean we're better than anybody else. It means it takes all of us to create the greatness of God. And yet, Spirit is even more than that. It's more than what we are. It's all of us, but it's even more. So as spiritual beings, the primary relationship here is with Spirit, with God. And do we recognize that and allow that to fuel our lives? Or are we held back by our thinking? we can turn away from circumstances of life. And when we focus on the spiritual truth of who we are and how we were made and what we can express, we embrace that truth and we can give up fear. Love is letting go of fear. That's what they sang to us. Love is letting go of fear. In the Science of Mind textbook on page 238, Ernest Holmes says, fear, all kinds of fear, are some of the thoughts which quickly manifest in the body of humankind as heart trouble. The remedy for this is love. Perfect love casts out fear. Now, this is a section of the textbook when Ernest is talking about physical things that happen to people and what is the spiritual significance of this. So he's saying when you have heart trouble, this could signal fear in your body. There's a whole section here that talks about when we have worry, fear, hate, that there's a chemical reaction in our body, and it lays down part of the stuff in our joints that keeps us from moving, that will keep us stiff, because physically we become fearful, and so we're stiff. We can't really move with ease and grace. It's a physical reaction to a spiritual state of being. So we all get to know this. We get to take this in and say, what is going on? Some of you know Reverend Norm Bouchard. He is my mentor minister. He's the senior minister at Center for Spiritual Living in Colorado Springs. And Reverend Norm was diagnosed with colon cancer. He's halfway through his chemotherapy. He's had his surgery. He's doing very well. And he said, you know, I need to understand what's behind this. Why do I have colon cancer? What did that come up for me for? And so he's doing some deep study into what does this mean on a spiritual basis for me? And how can I embrace this and not fear it? I think that's a pretty brave thing to do. So as we grow and mature spiritually, we get the chance to move through situations in life and see how is this working for us and what can we learn from it. It's all having to do with the power of our thought. I created this affirmation, and I want to share it with you here. To help us mature ourselves spiritually and to understand this. Spirit is always loving me, protecting me, and guiding me to a greater good. Will you say that with me? Spirit is always loving me, protecting me, and guiding me to a greater good. This is the power of our thought. When we take an affirmation like this, and we say it every day, many times throughout the day, it changes how we view life and how we view the world. We know that we are being loved, protected, and guided. And what's wrong with that? Doesn't that keep us in that vibration of a spiritual being? Knowing that we are one with God. That's the power that we can have. Reverend Jane Beach is a minister who is retired now. She lives in California. I have been blessed with, she shared a lot with me and is very wise. Reverend Jane has a wonderful story. She was an atheist for years and years and years until Spirit really finally convicted her. So that's a whole other talk. But she became a very powerful minister at Centers for Spiritual Living. She's retired now, just in the last year. And the wildfires in California, around her community, all of a sudden the winds changed and the fire was coming very quickly toward her neighborhood. And so Reverend Jane had to evacuate with only the clothes on her back. She made it to the shelter and spent the night in the shelter. The next morning, she got on Facebook and gave this message. She's a big Facebook person. She said, I had a very restful night's sleep. Spirit comforted me all night long. And I know that things are okay. She went on to talk about, please pray for the people that are here in the shelter with me and all people in California that are being affected by these fires. I want them to know the comfort of spirit that I'm feeling right now. I know that God is here with me, and I want everybody in this shelter and everybody in California to understand this as well. God is here in the midst of the raging fire. God is here. It opened my heart to pray for these people. That is spiritual maturity, when we can be in the midst of that fire of life and be able to think about, how can I help others? Pray for others that they can feel God like I'm feeling God. And she went about that day doing what she does best, ministering to people, loving people, listening to their fear, and giving out love. She replaced the fear with love. The next night, I was excited because I got an update from someone else that said, Reverend Jane let us know that her condo association president snuck back into their neighborhood to see the devastation. The neighborhood is gone. But at the end of one cul-de-sac, 6 buildings were left. One of those is Reverend Jane's condo. When you hold that consciousness, good things come. I'm not saying your house will always be saved from fire, but the attitude that we have, the way we live life, certainly makes a big difference there. Good things can come from fire. I did a little research, and from the Pacific Biodiversity Institute, there was an article that talked about how forest fires really are doing good, that they're helpful for our ecosystem. That when there are dead trees in the forest fire is able to take those and burn them so that the ash can go down into the soil and it feeds new plant life. It talked about how once a forest fire comes through, it cleans out the underbrush. And so there are, insects and diseases that can be growing on the floor of the forest, and the forest fire will kill those and allow native species to come forth. Wildfires, we should have that picture up here. Wildfires, when they are finished, the bottom picture here is wildflowers that come up. So the fire can turn to something good. It can clear out that canopy of trees at the top so that the smaller trees can get sunlight and can grow and be nourished. Good things can come from fire. What do you fear in life? And I call this the fires of life. What is it that keeps you from living full out? I want to tell you about another fire. I had a fire last week. When I was in North Carolina at the ministers' gathering, we were invited to do a fire walk. What an amazing experience this was for me. Now, I knew going in, this puppy is not going to be walking on fire. But I want to be there, and I want to support people, and I want to see how this goes. So I went. There were about 150 ministers at this gathering. We had probably 75 to 100 show up for the fire walk. A good number of them didn't even show up because that wasn't something they were going to participate in. Everybody in the room, we were told, had to sign the release form. whether you were walking on the fire or just there to support. You still had to sign the release saying, I'm not going to sue CSL. I'm not going to sue CSL Asheville. I am not going to sue any of the people that are leading this fire walk. And know that this could hurt my body. You could have detrimental effects from walking on this fire. It was pretty scary. But we signed our release forms, or we couldn't stay for the evening. And then after we signed those, they took us outside. They gave us each a low block of wood. And so we took our piece of wood, and we were instructed how to lay it down on 2 rows on the ground. Then others came behind us and laid their wood across those 2 rows. There were 2 more runs of wood, and then more across those. 2 more runs. They built it up 4 layers high. Then they took and stuffed straw in between all of the pieces of wood. They poured an accelerant on the straw. And then they had 7 people come forward to represent the 7 directions in the Native American tradition. East, south, west, north. Mother Earth, Grandmother Sky, and inward. And those 7 people came and lit the fire. And when they lit it, the fire blew up. This is the actual fire, a picture of it. That's John Waterhouse there, who was leading this. He's our field leader for Center for Spiritual Living. And he was helping with bringing the fire out to everyone. He said, I want you to get close enough that you can understand this is a hot fire. Well, he didn't have to encourage us to get closer because we were all standing there, and when they lit the fire, we all jumped back. It was hot. They took us, once the fire was built, it was raging like this. They took us and brought us back inside, and for the next 2 hours, talked to us about a fire walk and what we were doing and what this represents in our life. And I'll save you that 2-hour lecture. But it was very scary. On many levels. A fire walk is where you as a group, you don't do this by yourself. You do this as a group, and the group consciousness lifts you up. But you're walking through your fear. Fear of intimacy, not doing what Spirit wants. You're walking through your fear to your goal, what it is that you set for yourself. How much trust do we have that we can walk through our fear in life to whatever it is that we want? A better relationship, a different job, a wonderful spiritual home. No matter what it is that we're going through in life, the diagnosis that happens, if we have our goal and we know what we're going for, can we continue toward that goal no matter what is happening with the conditions of our life? That's what a fire walk is about. Meeting your fear and walking through it. And as you give up your fear and move into love, then you can walk on the fire and not be hurt. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? I thought so too. And so in my mind, for 2 hours while he's talking to us, I'm thinking, no way in hell, come on. Let's be real. It's going to happen. Conditions of your life. I'm a diabetic. So I'm going this week to see a brand new doctor the first time here in Parker. Can you imagine if I take my shoes off and my socks for him to look at my feet and he says, why do you have all these blisters on your feet? And I say, I did a fire walk. He's going to tell me I'm crazy. So no way, I am not doing this. I'll be there to support the other people. But there's reasons, there are valid reasons why I should not do this. Would you agree? That was self-serving for me. So I sat there and I listened And I was petrified, and my mind kept giving me all these reasons. You have to go back to CSL Parker. What if they have to cut off your legs? They won't be able to see you if you're down here. Crazy stuff. And then, when they were ready, they took us outside to the fire. The fire keepers had been out there tending the fire. And so, when we went back out after 2 hours, this is what the fire looked like. The pictures are a little dark, but you can see the hot coals are there. And you're going to walk from one side of this to the other. And you start at this side, and John Waterhouse will be at this side. John's standing there with his arms open to give you love. Love knowing that you have walked through your fear into a place of love. We stood around the fire. We cheered, we sang. We lifted each other up as people kept walking through the fire. I still had no intention of doing this. But I was glad people were enjoying it and things were going well. Now the realistic truth, when you got to John, he hugged you, and they said you put up one foot and then the other, so that the person that was squatted down there spraying the water on your feet could get to your feet. Don't keep your feet down. Lift up one and the other so the water can spray on them. Take off all your toe rings so that you don't have an ember that's stuck between your toe and the ring. I mean, this is serious stuff. Now, we're walking out to the fire, and Ken Gordon, our spiritual leader for Centers for Spiritual Living, is with us. And he's going out, and I hear him right behind me turn to his wife, and he says, I am petrified. I am so fearful of this, I don't think I can do this. Why would we come to something like this? And then we turned the corner and I couldn't hear the rest of their conversation. But I knew that he was filled with fear. Which only helped me know, you're so smart. You should do this. The long and the short of it is, at one point, Spirit called me to the fire. And I stood in front of it. And I knew that this was conditions of my life that hold me back. And how can I be an example for anybody else if I let conditions of my life hold me back? The prize is that I'm walking in an intimate relationship with Spirit. And so, I had to give up that fear. I got to give up that fear and walk through the fire to John's open arms on the other side. It was amazing. Now he told us, don't look at your feet the first night. You can look at them the second day, but don't look at them the first night. And so I didn't. I did take a shower because I could see all kinds of ash on my feet. But I didn't look at the bottoms of my feet. And I can tell you, when I go to the doctor this week, there are no burns. There are no blisters. Spirit lifted me as I walked on that fire. And it walked through my fear to be what I'm called to be the person I'm called to be. And that is something that is so exciting for me because you are a part of that. You may not know it yet, but we're doing great things at CSL Parker. God has plans for us here. And we are going to grow, and we are going to have people's lives enriched and deepened because of who we are as spiritual beings. And that's what I want to share with you. And that's what I want you to be able to share with one another. So that we are supporting one another in our spiritual growth. When we can give up that fear and know that love is all there is. God is love, and God is there all the time. No matter what the fire is, no matter what the circumstance of life is, we can walk through it. I have my card they gave me at the end. Let's go the other way. And it says, I walked on fire. I know I can do anything. And that is true. So true. Will you join me as we pray? I believe in God and absolutely nothing else. I know that this infinite intelligence that I call God is the power in this life and is indwelling each one of us. And I recognize everything is the manifest body of this power, and that every person is the individualization of the thing itself. Knowing this, I speak my word for all of our communities, all of our ministers, all of our practitioners, all of the congregants in California, affirming the truth of who they are. I know they are safe and secure, no matter what the outward experience is. I see them healthy and whole. And I commend their courage as they raise in consciousness to that consciousness of love and peace. We all know and recognize the right action in the course of our lives. I speak my word for the people of California, knowing that they are secure and well cared for. I know that every resource that is required is provided. I know for them peace and harmony in their interactions with each other, and that goodness is the effect of all that occurs. I speak my word for our entire planet, knowing that it is a dynamic, vibrant idea in the mind of God, and that it is flexible and resilient and unwavering. I know that whatever appears lost is in actuality found, that all is replaced by something greater than anything we could have experienced. And I know for each and every one of us that we release control and do what lies before us with awareness, compassion, and love, embracing the call to surrender to our higher power and take action on whatever appears as a certain need in each moment. This is what I know. This is what I expect. This is what is so, right here and right now. So I release my word back into the universe, that infinite intelligence, knowing that it is accomplished. I let go and let God, and so it is.